Hello. Today we start the lecture about money supply. We already finished with a discussion of the demand for money, and now we will turn to the other side in the money market, that is central banking, its monetary policy, and money supply. First of all, I hope you have some previous knowledge about it. And when I say monetary policy, you know what we are talking about. Though the question which is on the top today is about the main focus of monetary policy, about why do we have it and what it is aimed for. Um, it's not a secret that most of the central banks, which are responsible for monetary policy, the aim is to keep price stability or stable inflation. We can also find some other goals coming together, but prices usually are the major one. Um, we can discuss few stylized facts on the goals and operating targets of monetary policy. So, what do we know about them, or what is the reality? And usually, central bank has more than one goal. Its major focus is on inflation, but besides it, it might have a goal on GDP or unemployment in the country, which are interlinked. It might be focused on exchange rates or keeping exchange rate fixed. So those goals, or which becomes more important, depends on the term which we're talking about, on the major problems in the economy we have, and etc. Um, the target inflation of many central banks is low, between 1 and 3%. This is what is thought to be a healthy inflation for the economy, which doesn't harm it, but it doesn't also ruin the stability. Um, Few banks may have higher inflation because of their economic situation. So we may have higher inflation goals because of economic situation, but good and sound inflation rate should be as usually about 2% per year. Operating target of monetary policy can be money aggregate or interest rates. That is what the central bank focuses on when aiming for its goal. Um, Central bank does not control money supply directly, but uses the instruments, so the control is indirect. That is very important fact that uh, the way the monetary policy works is not that straightforward. Um, let's say okay, so few definitions, and then we will come to that. So few definitions when talking about those target values, goals, and etc. So the target value is one whose value monetary policy aims to change. So usually it's, as it mentioned, inflation, but not necessarily only it. Operating target variable is one on which the central bank can directly or almost directly operate through the instruments at its disposal. So usually it's money aggregates or interest rate. That is what a central bank can change in money market using its instruments. Guides a variable that provides information about current state in the economy. So that would be most of the economic indicators what we have. Intervening variables are the ones that lies between the goals and instruments of central bank. That is very closely related with operating target variable. That is what the central bank can change. What does the central bank can change in monetary policy to achieve its goal? And also how it works. Okay, let's say central bank wants inflation to be lower. It's too high according to its goal, so it has a goal to lower the inflation. How can it do it? How a central bank can lower the inflation? Okay, so as central bank cannot set the prices directly, it cannot say to the companies all over the country what prices they should ask and how can they change the prices. It's impossible. So the way the central bank tries to do it is to change the environment in which the companies are working, or to change the reasons, to eliminate the reasons why companies are increasing prices. So why companies are increasing prices, or what are the reasons of inflation? Normally, all the reasons of inflation is linked with the costs, with the increasing costs of the companies. And if it's what we call supply side inflation, that is when production costs of a company increases, normally central bank cannot do much about it. Also, the increasement of production cost might be linked with, in general, the growth of price level in the country, and this is not coming from the cost side. So, in most of the cases, higher inflation is linked with the demand side. That is, that demand for goods is way too high, and it has a push on the companies to produce more and more. For that aim, they need to employ more workers, they need to pay higher salaries, and so their costs, labor costs increases, and so they need to increase the prices. All this says that if we want to lower the inflation, we need to reduce the aggregate demand in the country. Okay, so what can we change there? How can we change the aggregate demand? It mainly has four components. Two of them cannot be changed. It's government expenditure and exports, where the central bank really has no power on it. The government expenditure is set by the public budget, and exports is the demand in foreign countries. So again, our central bank cannot do anything about it. But the other two components are consumption and investment, local consumption or domestic consumption and domestic investment, which might be lowered by by the central bank. Okay, so what the central bank can do to decrease consumption and investment? It has two possibilities. It has a possibility to change the quantity of money or to change the interest rate. And the central bank can set the higher interest rates, or it should make the interest rates higher, so the demand in the economy could be reduced. Higher interest rates would reduce investment because of the borrowing becoming more expensive, and higher interest rates would reduce consumption again because of the borrowing becoming more expensive. Or we think that sometimes it may motivate people to save more, and that's why smaller share of their money would be dedicated for expenditure. So the central bank can higher or can increase the interest rates. For that, it has its instruments, or how the central bank can reduce the interest rates. You see, the path is not that straightforward. We are not even talking now yet about what instruments or what exactly the central bank can do, but we see the path how if the central bank uses one few of its instruments, how or how the inflation in the country would be affected. So we can put everything in a table here, which would say that what are the major or most popular goals of the central banks, what are its operating targets and intermediate targets. Aggregate demand is intermediate target. So if it wants to achieve lower inflation, it needs to change the aggregate demand, and it can change the aggregate demand by changing interest rates. And changing interest rates might be done by free instruments, open market operations, discount rate, or reserve requirement. Which instrument that central bank chooses depends on many things. In most of the developed countries, reserve requirement is not used. It actually, if you look at the web page of any major central bank in the world, like ECB or Federal Reserves or the Central Bank of UK or the majority, you would find and you would, and if you would look for the about their monetary policy, you would not be nobody usually even mentions the reserve requirement, because in most countries it's unified, it's set very low, and it's not been changed, as again this is linked with the stability of banking sector, and we use it just for keeping the stability and not for monetary policy. Though you can read about the central bank of the about the monetary policy of the central bank in China, and we use this instrument as well. Um, so the most popular are left two is open market operations or discount trade, and both of them are used. In the Which one would be more important depends on the particular situation, the particular situation in the economy, the particular timing, when and what is done, and etc. So the central bank, let's say, sets the discount rate. Based on that, the commercial banks should change short-term interest rates, and so in the interest rates in the economy could change. Also, the aggregate demand in the economy could change, and so as the aggregate demand changes, inflation should change as well. You see how long it is. So there are several important questions to answer or to discuss when talking about those relationships between goals, targets, and instruments. First of all, are relationships stable and predictive? Do they change over time? Can we estimate the actual relationship and trust it forever? And that's very important for knowing what monetary policy we shall do. Second is, can the central bank achieve the desired levels of operating targets through the instruments at its disposal? So if the central bank changes the discount rate, will the interest rate in the economy change? If the central bank sets higher discount rate, will the commercial banks increase the interest rate for the public? Usually, of course, yes, but we can find really situations when it did not happen, or when it doesn't change exactly in the same way, and so on. So that's again one thing to mention or to think about is would all the participants in the economy behave in the way central bank is expecting them to behave. And the last thing is about the lags of these relationships. As we already talked about that long path from the monetary policy instrument to the goal, to the change of a final variable we want to change. So are there time lags, or how long does it take for everything to happen? Usually it takes a while. It may take 2 years, well, or up to 3 years, and which means that the central bank should think about or should know the inflation after, let's say, 2 years, which we'll have in the economy, and seeing that if, for example, it's going to be too high, they should use the instruments now um, in order to affect the inflation that we will have in 2 years. Though it's okay, maybe we could really have stable relationship, so we would know how much discount rate we need to change in order the interest rate to change in particular percents, and then the demand would change in particular way, not only way but in particular size, and that's gonna be the exact effect on inflation rate. So first of all, we need to know the linkages, the exact values of linkages. But the second thing here is about forecasting. Can we predict the future of the economy well? Can we forecast quite accurate the inflation in after 2 years? And that's again something, or some not shortages, some risks of the monetary policy. Everything what I said we can put in functions, which would say that the ultimate goal variable, what we call, for example, inflation, depends on intermediate targets, like let's say interest rate in the economy, and all the other exogenous variables. While the interest rate, our intermediate target, depends on instruments of monetary policy, and again, some exogenous variables. What does it mean? Of course, we can write one single function, but it also means that actually what we have is several layers of relationships, which makes it not easy to estimate and not easy to model everything.